Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My guest here today is Jim Kemp Jr., who is the co-owner of Kemp Negotiations. Jim, I am very, very excited for our chat today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Look forward to it.
Yeah, so negotiations and communication, anything of that sort is something that's a passion of mine. I would just say I'm fascinated by the entire topic. So tell everyone a little bit more about who you guys are, who you help, and what you do.
Okay. Yeah, that's a could be a long answer.
I know, yeah, we could be here all until tomorrow if you want.
Right. So the company was started back in the late '90s by my father, Jim Camp Sr. He passed about 10 years ago, but the company's been going strong for almost 30 years now. Jim Camp Sr. I go by Junior. I'm not a junior, but I have to because we look alike, sound alike, and we don't want to get everybody confused.
Yeah.
Jim Camp Sr. wrote a book years ago called Start With No. And Start With No, I guess you could say, is a contrarian view to the negotiation arena. When the book came out, it really went against the grain of what everybody considered negotiation to be all about. That book was extremely popular. In fact, it's still moving along today. The sales are great with that book. And that was really kind of our foundation for our organization. So the reason I think we're a little bit different than most negotiation training organizations is that we spend a lot of time coaching. What I mean by coaching is we actually embed or dig in with our clients and coach them through real situations, real negotiations that they're working on, all different forms of negotiation, sales negotiation, procurement, contract, mergers, acquisitions, anything you can think of where there's an agreement you're trying to reach. We coach people in a systematic way. So we have a system that's been developed over the last 30 years to keep everybody aligned and in emotional control. So that's really what we do. We coach people through real deals.
What I've found is that from many conversations, everybody's always, it's kind of like when you hop in the shower after an argument, like, oh, I should have said that thing. Or if I said this, it would have been so much better. I find that so many people, as they process communication and negotiating in their head, it's always like, oh, in hindsight, I should have said this. In hindsight, I could have said that. Where do you think people go wrong when trying to negotiate and trying to, I'll just leave it at that. When do you think people go wrong when trying to negotiate?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a matter of going wrong. I think negotiation is what we would consider a human performance event. What that means is anything, athletics, anything where you're forced to execute and kind of think on the spot and react in the environment is a human performance event. We have good days, we have bad days.
Yeah.
But I think if I were to say, where do people go wrong? I would start with the mindset before they even go into a negotiation and how they prepare. Just for example, and if I were to ask you, when I say the word negotiation, what pops into your mind?
A lot of back and forth. It's just figuring out what's best for both, but at the same time, usually both parties are trying to get the best for them in general.
Okay, so back and forth. We also hear the words give and take.
Yeah.
We hear, and this is all around the mindset. This is like the way you view it before you even start negotiating.
Sure.
We hear the words win-win. We're trying to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. We may even hear the word compromise. In fact, compromise is so prevalent in our country's mindset when it comes to negotiation. It's unbelievable to us what we discover when we start coaching our clients. And the fact is, most people believe that compromise is required to reach a deal. So much so that if I were to ask a team of folks getting ready to go in and negotiate a big deal, and I were to say, what do you want from this deal? Typically I'm going to get a range. I'm going to get, our ideal scenario is we would like to get this, but we're going to go ahead and pre-plan our walk away point. As long as we get this, we're satisfied.
Yeah.
Well, here's the problem with that approach. That is a compromise-based mindset approach to negotiation. So from the get-go, the moment, especially when we're looking in the rearview mirror, we start reflecting on what went wrong. What we've discovered is that the moment the deal starts to feel pressure, the moment the other side expresses that they're not happy with your price, the moment they we hear things all the time like, this is a non-starter. I can't go to my board with this.
Hmm.
When that pressure is applied, typically, if somebody has a compromise-based mindset, what do you think they do?
They just go for the lowest common denominator.
They start
Yeah.
to give things away.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that they actually make assumptions on what they have to give away to get the deal.
Mm.
Now, that is, once you start that process of starting to give things up, when you feel the pressure of a deal, that's a slippery slope,
Hmm.
because your opponent on the other side of the table is most likely going to say, "Oh, okay, we have some room here to bargain,"
Yeah.
right?
Leeway.
And that's typically the biggest
Mm.
downfall that we see, is the mindset going in. And that's one of the things we focus on in our coaching and training, is reversing that mindset so that they understand what negotiation really is.
Hmm.
And that starts with our definition.
Mm. Interesting. Do you, on top of the mindset and making sure that you're well prepared for this type of interaction, do you, what would be some, maybe one, two, or three things that you would give as advice to people for them to improve their negotiation skills? Maybe a couple of things that they can do so that they can not instantly see some better results, but gradually, rather at a faster rate, can see some improvement coming in.
Okay, so one of the first things that I think is most important is for them to understand the definition of the word negotiation and think of it in these terms. So our definition, right? It's the effort between two or more parties trying to reach an agreement,
Hmm.
right? So we have two or more parties making an effort to reach an agreement, with all parties having the right to veto. That means both sides of the table have the right to say no. Now, I'm going to get to the word no here in a second.
Yeah.
If you recognize that, and that definition, my father found that definition in a dictionary years and years ago when he was on an airline trip. He's like, "What?" He was just curious. How is negotiation defined?
Hmm.
Well, both parties having the right to veto means that people make decisions. They have the right to say no.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's first and foremost, that has to be in the back of your mind. And you notice in that definition, you don't hear win-win, you don't hear compromise,
Yeah.
you don't hear give and take. We're making decisions, and everybody has the right to say no.
Hmm.
Now, when you walk into a negotiation, and let's use an example of a sales negotiation,
Sure.
and I'm sure you've been to, I don't know, maybe an automobile dealership, an appliance
Yeah, of
store,
course.
of course, and immediately you feel the pressure. You feel the pressure from the salesman, right? The salesman probably has a really good product. He or she really wants to help you as a consumer.
Hmm.
They believe in what they're selling. That's great. Yet they apply pressure,
Mm.
right? They're trying to close the deal. They're trying to convince you.
Hmm.
And that word no, and the reason we wrote, the title of the book is Start with No,
Yeah.
is that if you give somebody, this is something that will change your dynamic immediately, regardless of what you're negotiating. When you sit down with your opponent, and when you sincerely, and when you mean this, and you say, "Look, I'd like to get together, sit down and see if there's a mutual fit here. I'm not sure if what we're offering is going to be, satisfactory to you. But at any point in the process, I want you to feel comfortable telling me no at any point.
Hmm.
It's really important to me that you don't feel pressure in this deal. I just want you to feel comfortable telling me no. You're not going to hurt my feelings. It's okay, and I want to make sure you're relaxed."
Hmm. Hmm. Do you state that to them, like being
Absolutely.
very direct? Hmm.
Absolutely. We just coached a car dealership up in Michigan. I spent about a year with 100 salespeople
Mm.
coaching them, and that's one of the first things they have to get over, is that when the consumer walks through the front door and they know they're going to get ready to negotiate to buy a car, they're under a tremendous amount of emotional pressure, because they know that they're going to have to make a hard decision. And they know that the salesperson that's going to try to do their job and convince them, "Hey, isn't this the right vehicle for you to drive away today?"
Yeah.
That type of pressure is not effective. It pushes people into a corner. It
Hmm.
actually creates objections, because they rather than tell you no, they'll just say, "Well, you know what, Jim, give me some time to think about it.
Hmm.
Let me go talk to my wife. Let me go." They feel that pressure and they back
Push the
away.
guard up. Yeah.
So when you give the right to say no up front, and you mean it, and you're not afraid to hear the word
Mm-hmm.
no, you lower that emotional barrier on the other side of the table, and that's
Mm-hmm.
critical. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two is, it's really interesting if you look at um, children, probably the best negotiators in the world.
Mm.
When they hear the word no, what do?
Oftentimes, scream, shout, cry, anything that they can.
They don't stop,
Yeah.
right? They relentlessly keep negotiating. They might even go to the other decision maker. They might go to mom, and
Yeah, of course.
so. But something's interesting has happened in our society when people hit adolescence and they start to associate the word no with failure or rejection. Then it starts to become a negative. It starts to have a negative impact on people.
Hmm.
The word no is simply a decision. Yes, no. A no maintains a status quo. It's the safest decision anybody can make in any negotiation, but people
Yeah.
are so afraid of it that they'll do everything they can to avoid hearing it, and they'll do everything they can to avoid saying it. We are, as a society, afraid of the word no.
Hmm.
And what we discover is that if somebody tells you no, and you've treated them with respect, you've given them the right to say no, and you ask the right questions, which is going to be my next point, you have the opportunity to find out where you're falling short.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than assuming what you have to do to get the deal, if for example, if you were to tell me no, I'd say that's fair. Help me understand where we're falling short.
Mm-hmm.
What are the real problems that you see? So when we hear the word no, that's actually an opportunity for us to figure out why they're saying no.
Mm-hmm.
We might be able to fix it. And we've narrowed down 4 reasons why people say no. Either they don't see it, there's no vision of benefit to, let's say, buy the product, that's just not important to them,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't have the data to support that decision that, am I getting a good purchase? Am I getting a good deal here? There's no data to support it.
Mm.
Or we're not negotiating with the qualified people. They don't have the authority to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's another decision maker, or maybe they're bluffing, right? They're going to tell you no to see how you respond, to see if you're going to cave in and give in on price, which is what we see every day with procurement in
Yeah.
business. And I don't dislike procurement people. We coach them, but that's what they do. They'll say, nope, we don't like your price. We're going to throw you out of the bid. Well, is that procurement professional really the person that's going to write the check and make the decision, or is it the CEO,
Mm-hmm.
right? The leadership team. So give the right to say no. When you hear the word, that's an opportunity. It's not a negative,
Mm-hmm.
right? And ask questions.
Mm.
And understand that there are 2 types of questions, verb-led and interrogative-led. A habit pattern that most people have is they ask verb-led questions. I'll give you an example. Are you having a good day?
Mm-hmm. Which leads to a yes or a no answer.
Okay. If I say, what's your day been like?
More open-ended. I can be a million different things for you, or for me, right?
Right. So in order, when we're negotiating, we want to get into the world of our opponent on the other side of the table.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to do that is we have to be in their world. We have to see what they see.
Mm-hmm.
So we build interrogative-led questions, open-ended questions. We present those questions in a nurturing, respectful manner to uncover, I guess, some of the problems or challenges that maybe we're trying to help let's validate. Is what we're providing really of use to our potential client?
Mm-hmm.
Or is our company really a fit for this merger?
Mm-hmm.
Depends on who you ask and what kind of questions you ask. So another thing we can do is, number 1, stop presenting. We have a rule called no talking.
Yeah.
When you're asking questions, you are actually in control of the negotiation itself, because you want to spend 75% of your time listening and only 25% of the time talking, because your opponent will tell you everything that's important to them. And then you can figure out, okay, here are some things I can finally present. Once you understand, what's the challenge they're trying to solve? Are they the decision maker? Do they have the budget to make a decision? But a lot of times we find people presenting too much information too quickly, and it creates objection. And those verb-led questions, trigger an emotional response because it's forcing you to make a decision. An open-ended interrogative-led question does not force the brain to make a decision. It actually makes you relax because you start talking and sharing your world, which is important. So those verb-led questions put pressure on people, and people don't realize that.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, especially the part where it's people usually, you said presenting. There's so much of that I see, which is so much presenting and trying to sell the offer and how it's good and all these things where they don't even know enough about the person yet, which obviously, as you said, the interrogative questions, that's what leads to those answers. You have to ask those questions. And so many people are like, here's what I do. Here's what's so great about it. Do you want it? And it's like, you don't even know me, man. So,
this makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't they want to move forward?
Yeah, exactly. It's so interesting. And what are some of the biggest challenges that you've found about coaching negotiation and helping people understand this process and being able to really make it part of their identity?
Okay, so the interesting thing about coaching is that everybody, when they come to us, they have a particular set of skills, strengths and weaknesses. There's a lot of talented folks out there. And I will say this about coaching. And if you think of it this way, it actually is surprising to me that more people don't hire coaches. But almost every professional athlete, right? People that are in high performing lines of work, right, have coaches. In fact, they might have multiple coaches. So first and foremost, there has to be a mindset, a growth mindset, where somebody's willing to say, look, I've been negotiating for 20 years. I'm at this level in my business. I want to get to the next level. These deals are very important to me. And I know I'm talented, but you know what? I think I want some coaching because I want to get better. So first and foremost, coaching is not going to happen. It's not going to be successful if the client doesn't have a growth mindset that acknowledges, okay, I can get better.
Yeah.
Now, when we're applying coaching, and when you take a structure, so we have a mindset that we want to kind of address right away to help them see it differently, but then we have a structure of how we prepare for a deal. It's not complicated, but it is a defined structure. And when you go into a deal using a defined structure, or what we call a system, in a system of preparation, you prepare your questions, you set your agenda. We have just a few steps in preparation that we must follow. Developing that habit pattern to actually do that and take the time to prepare is important. So that's going to require a behavioral shift, right? We have to be able to slow down to go fast. So in other words, we're not shooting from the hip anymore. We're going to step back and take 5 or 10 minutes to prepare before we enter in and start executing a deal.
Yeah.
When we are executing, then we want to be able to stick to certain behaviors that are going to keep us safe. Probably the two most important things you can do with behavior is maintain a nurturing and respectful posture. There is no such thing as getting aggressive, take it or leave it. You want to stay calm and steady the whole time, because what happens is your opponent begins to kind of mirror your behavior. We want to keep emotions fairly neutral during any negotiation. And then the other change is when we're done, how do we analyze what just happened and what happens next? Like what did we just uncover, and where did we miss? Where did we miss an opportunity to maybe dig a little deeper, get more information? So the challenge with coaching is the willingness to be coached. I guess having the humility to say, I can get better. Even if you're a super polished business professional, everybody can get better. And then the behavioral change of saying, all right, I have to not only apply a system, I have to understand the system, why it's important, and I have to be able to go back and implement it and practice over and over and over. And what's really funny is people continuously make the same mistakes, and changing that behavior is really hard. But when you have a coach, it becomes a lot easier, because the coach gets to know the player, and the player, when they're willing to share, hey, this is what I think I did well, this is what I did wrong, and having another set of eyes looking at a very important deal gives them ideas and thoughts that they may not have considered. Because when you think about the amount of deals our coaches have, negotiations our coaches have been involved with,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's countless.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we've seen a lot of the same things over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that extra set of eyes helping them
Mm-hmm.
not only change behavior, but looking at a complex deal is important. And it's, a huge return on investment for them.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's the right set of eyes see the same patterns that happen over and over again. So the feedback from those eyes is going to be much better than your own feedback trying to say, "Hey, here's what I think I can improve." When maybe that's not the thing. It could be something else. And
Yeah.
you just mentioned ROI. How have you been able to show the value of what you do to prospects who are uncertain about it? So maybe on the business side, what are some of the challenges of being able to show people, hey, here's something that is very valuable to you. And one, yes, it will help our business, but two, it will help you and your business too. How have you been able to overcome maybe that side of things? And what are some of the challenges there?
Yeah. So we'll start with big business. So we have some private equity teams, that have privately held companies that have us on retainer.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they have us on retainer, we have a long-term relationship with them, is because over time they're able to look and say, okay, we've seen this amount of growth,
Mm-hmm.
and we've seen improvements to our bottom line that we can attribute directly to coaching. I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you a real an example.
Sure.
One of our clients, if they get let's say they're bidding on a project manufacturing, and they're far more expensive than their competition, and they admit to us before coaching, they say, well, when the procurement official with this organization said, hey, you're too expensive, you need to cut your price, or we're going to throw you out of the bid, they admitted that they were immediately going back to the drawing board before coaching saying, okay, let's look at the engineering specs and see where we can cut some costs and see if we can lower this price from 2 million down to 1.7. Maybe that'll make us competitive. Instead of like taking their time saying, no, okay, we're going to let them say no. We're not going to compromise on our price, and we're going to get comfortable being uncomfortable for a little bit here. We're going to let the decision play out. And when procurement sees that they haven't moved for 2 or 3 iterations and that they're holding firm on their price, there's a reason that they're in the bid in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Because the product that they deliver is far superior to their competition. And it just so happens that the company they're selling it to, they need that top quality product.
Yeah.
So when they see and they go, wait a minute, we just saved $300,000 on this one sale of this one piece of equipment because we followed Camp's coaching and their system, and we stayed with it. Just that alone right there, I mean, 300,000 is a lot of money, can pay for a lot of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or when an individual spends, some money to get coached personally, you ask them, okay, well, how long will it take you to recoup what you've just learned? If you see a 10% increase in the number of vehicles that you've sold, or the number of houses that you've sold, or listings, or whatever business that they're in, when you see a marginal increase in your success, what does that look like over time? And then they start to realize, okay, well, it's no different than investing in education. Right? If you invest in an Ivy League education, you're probably going to come out of school and if we just look at the numbers, highly educated folks are probably going to have a higher income because they have that solid education as a foundation. So trying to get people to see that changing behavior is hard. It has to carry a price tag to it. Otherwise, it has no value. Things that are free don't have any value. Things that are worthwhile are difficult.
Yeah.
So, we don't pressure anybody into coaching, but what we find is once they really dig into our stuff and read the books and maybe download a course and really start thinking about it, they can't shake it. And they say, okay, I gotta think it through. But once they do, it becomes a part of them. It becomes the way they operate and the way they function. And it sticks with them over a long period of time and makes them highly successful. If you think about it, agreements are around us all day, every day.
Yeah.
Right. And agreements require decisions on both sides of the table. And I think negotiation is one of the most critical skill sets for anybody in life, regardless of what you do.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's oftentimes it is looked at in like the business lens, but it's the relationship lens, it's the friendships, it's the family, it's everything that's going on with everyday interactions too. It's you talking to the barista about anything. Like
Yeah.
it's back and forth always, right? And I have a question, which is maybe a little bit left field, but if you had a magic wand, Jim, and I like asking this question because it gets people to just think outside the box a little bit. But if you had a magic wand and you could just wave this wand for the business, and it would solve one thing, maybe a challenge, an obstacle, an issue that's ongoing. It would solve one thing that would allow you to grow faster, hit your goals faster, achieve the thing that you want to achieve. If this one thing is solved, what would that one thing be for you?
So if I could just wave a wand and solve a big problem
Within the business, yeah.
with business.
Within your business.
Okay. I would think if I could get everybody to read all three of our books
Mm.
and reject them. In other words, you have the right to say no. I want you to read these three books. I want you to read Start with No. I want you to read No, which is the second book my father wrote. And then I want you to read my book about leadership negotiation, because I'm basically claiming that leadership is a form of negotiation.
Mm.
And if you read those books with the mindset of, it's okay, I can reject the premise of all three of these.
Mm-hmm.
You can truly reject it, right? That then gives you the opportunity to discover whether or not what you read is valid.
Mm.
So practice what we preach.
Yeah.
Read our book and tell us no. Say, no, this won't work.
I really like that. I like that. I like the confidence in the assertiveness.
I would just like to get everybody to say, okay, I'm going to give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down, which is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fine. We're not for everybody. But what we
Mm-hmm.
find is sometimes when people actually take the time to read a book or to listen to the audio versions, whatever, the light goes on and then they can't shake it.
Yeah.
And then they all of a sudden realize, people that become more effective negotiating become better parents. They become better business associates. They become better leaders, better public servants. I mean, the ability to negotiate good, solid, lasting agreements in a respectful manner is something that helps people make decisions and moves things forward in life.
Mm.
Right? So even just helping young college kids make good decisions, or it's a skill, and it's something that I think our country needs, and we got to get over the fear of the word no.
Yeah, 100%. I agree
It's
with
okay
you.
it is okay to disagree with each other and to respectfully have a conversation. And I think the ability to negotiate is just one of those things that brings people together, because they can say no to each other, and it's okay. We're not going to hurt each other's feelings. We're not going to damage the relationship because we're not going to do this deal together.
Mm-hmm. As long as both sides are fully informed, which is so interesting, because then you have that freedom. Then you really truly have that choice of like, hey, I have everything that I need to understand about this specific situation that we're in, and I have the choice to say no.
Right. And just to give you, I want to go a little deeper on something.
Sure. Go ahead.
We've all had leaders that we've worked with, right, that are good, and some that aren't as good as others.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think that I argue about leadership as a form of negotiation is a lot of times we take the leader-follower agreement that's a lasting and enduring agreement for granted.
Mm.
People leave bosses all the time, right? People don't leave jobs. They leave bosses because they're not inspired. They're not connected. They don't feel, really in line with what the leader is laying down or selling. Mm-hmm. So too often we see that people confuse leadership with telling people what to do or having the rank, title, position of authority, just that inherent, well, I'm the boss, so I can tell people what to do. That is not leadership. Leadership to me is when you have the wherewithal to realize that you should allow your people to push back. It's okay to give them the right to say no to your ideas and thoughts, and ask them to collaborate and share what they see. Right? So if you're a leader and you are working with any number of people, the moment you become really effective at negotiating and giving others around you the right to say no, people that follow you, you will instantaneously start to build respect, and you'll start to get more of a connection with your team. And the same thing that makes you an effective negotiator will make you a more effective leader. And I learned that with my 35-year career in the military. So having the ability to negotiate makes you an effective leader. But you got to give people the right to say no. And that was kind of my point of just reject everything that we're saying in our books, reject our premise, our system. It's a good starting point because it'll start the conversation between us and the consumer.
That's so interesting. Jim, I have one final question for you, which is actually not a question for me. It's a question from the past guest, and they had no idea who you were. So ready for it?
Yeah.
All right, here it is. If you could reverse, or if you could go back in time and redo something to achieve better results, what would that be and why?
If I could personally go back in time and do something to achieve better results.
Yeah, change something you did, an action, a decision.
I probably would have spent a little bit more time preparing for my SAT. Personally, I'm probably I was getting recruited to play football in the Ivy League. And my SAT verbal score was not where it needed to be. And I knew it wasn't where it needed to be, but I didn't spend enough time trying to, to remedy that. So, I mean, that was just one time when I didn't have the focus when I was young. But I tell you what, I've learned more from my mistakes, and I've heard the word no numerous times. And I've always told all the airmen that I've led over the years, when you hear the word no, or when a door closes on you, another one opens. And when you hear the word no, that is, or when you don't really hit the mark that you want to hit. And I think all of us have those periods in our life where we said we could have done something different. We could have prepared more. But when you hit that, that's a defining moment. That's when everybody's going to be watching what you do and how you handle it. And if you get knocked down, you get back up and you keep moving, because there's no top rung on the ladder, especially in the negotiation world. You're never going to hit that expert level. You're always learning. I learn every day and I make mistakes every day. But I wish I would have studied more for my SAT. Might have been a different outcome. But I still went to Carnegie Mellon. I still made it. I still graduated with a real strong C+ average. But now not a lot of regrets.
That's awesome.
Every mistake I've made has led to either a learning situation or just a different path. Just keep moving forward.
100%. I completely agree with you there, Jim. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your insights, obviously giving some more knowledge in this space, which I think is so important. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about what you have going on and about camp negotiations?
Sure. You can go to campnegotiations.com. You can find, I'm Jim Camp. I'm on LinkedIn. Campnegotiations.com, though, we have a lot of free resources there. There's access to our books there. That's a good way to get exposed to what we do. But more importantly, when you go to campnegotiations.com, if you ask to contact a coach, ask for me specifically. If you have a question or you just want to bounce some things off of me, I do this all day long, every day. I love coaching, and I'm not afraid to talk to people to help them through a situation, to help them see what coaching is like. We're very approachable and we don't put pressure on people. Obviously, what we do isn't for everyone, but I do believe our books can help everybody. So I hope you'll take a look at those.
Awesome, Jim. Thank you so much.
Okay. Take care. Thanks for having me.